in the first 3 games. Dak was 7 of 8 targets to Lamb last night, including that 55-yard touchdown, which matched their touchdown total from the first 3 weeks. Meanwhile, it was a game that was ugly in a couple of different ways. One of them was the injury story afterwards. Dan, let's run through some of those. Micah Parsons, what do we know?
Injured his ankle. They x-rayed it after the game. The x-rays came back fine, but he's going to have an MRI today on that ankle to see what kind of injury it is, what kind of damage there is, what kind of timetable he may have. He was telling people last night he would do what he could to get back in time for next week's game. Of course, they have the extra 3 days, but once we figure out the severity of that, we will know more on timetable. Their other edge rusher, DeMarcus Lawrence, injured his foot in the third quarter of this game, did not return to the game. We saw him come back to the sideline. He was getting taped up on the sideline, but he did not come back in, so that's certainly something to watch if they're compromised at the edge rush positions next week against Pittsburgh, with one or both of those guys potentially out. And then Malik Neighbors, the incredible Giants rookie, you mentioned it, Greeny, he has suffered a concussion late in the game. Obviously did not return to the game, diagnosed with a concussion, so he'll enter the concussion protocol. He'll have to complete each step in order, be cleared by the independent neurotrauma consultant before he's cleared to play. Again, the Giants, like the Cowboys, have 3 extra days before their Week 5 game, so that gives you at least some hope that he can get through that process, although, as we've said a billion times, it's different for everyone.
They will be at Seattle a week from Sunday. He is inarguably the most watchable, if not the only watchable thing about the Giants. But so, Marcus, I want to channel somebody. If this was a talk show, if we were a radio talk show, we would have a caller named Angry Pete from New Jersey. His Pete McConville, he is the executive producer of our show. You know him well. He's just an angry fellow from New Jersey. And he went off in our meeting this morning about Daniel Jones, and I would like to try and channel him as best I can. It can all be summed up really by one play. Can we roll that play, Cindy? It's the first play of the second quarter. There is no play that an NFL quarterback loves more than a free play. The Giants clearly have a free play, right? The Cowboys have jumped off sides. They have Darius Slayton running down the field. He's 5 yards clear of the defense before that ball is thrown. He has to stop running. The reason that it looks closer and Diggs is able to get back and make the interception is because Slayton had to just stop, like literally stop running. And it was in that moment that Pete and all the other angry Giant fans said, I've seen enough. We need to move on. This guy just isn't getting it done and isn't going to. It was a mistake to sign him. We all kind of knew it. Even the Giants kind of knew it when they did it. They were sort of forced into doing it, and they need to rectify that and move on now. If one were to say that, if Angry Pete says that this morning, Marcus, what do you say?
He would be absolutely correct. Okay, and it's not about, like, Daniel Jones had good moments, unbeknownst to a lot of people after we watched that. But gee, after that particular play last night, I went on X and I tweeted, is Daniel Jones' arm strength gone? Because that is a ball that you put almost on the goal line with that type of, like Diggs was beat. And I'm sure he probably was thinking a double move, or they were going to just try to get the ball past the sticks in that particular situation. Obviously, sometimes the DBs don't know it's a free play. But the fact that you underthrow this guy, and honestly, it's more glaring now as we wake up this morning, because that could have been the difference in the game when you start thinking about that. Daniel Jones has these moments of inconsistency that you think to yourself, like, he threw some balls across the middle of the field where you're like, oh, that's an NFL professional quarterback throw. And then he comes back and does things like that. Or he dirts a ball in certain situations. I don't know. Like, and that's the worst thing you can say about a quarterback. I need you to either be bad so we can make a decision, or I need you to be good so we know where we are. Daniel Jones is neither. He's in the middle of abyss, somewhere where nobody else lives. And when you look at these numbers and you compare it to the play, it's like, I don't know if we can go further with this guy based on what we're trying to do offensively. And thank God for Malik Neighbors, because if he didn't have Malik Neighbors, I don't know what this game would have looked like.
Angry Pete from New Jersey is going to call into Barton Hahn on ESPN Radio today and is going to say they need to bench Daniel Jones right now. What are you going to say?
Not right now. I think he still gives them the best chance to win. I think he didn't, he would like to have that throwback, but he played good enough for them to win. They have to figure out how to get somebody else outside of Neighbors to step up. That's the problem. Like, too often that we can't really evaluate Daniel Jones because he has the worst roster, the 32nd best roster in football. So, like, outside of Neighbors, who's a rookie, like you said, he's been there 15 minutes, Swagu. He's their best player. They don't have the
Yep.
ability to run the ball, so they had to put it in Danny Dimes' arms. Like, Daniel Jones is going to be one of these quarterbacks that's going to go somewhere and hide away like Geno Smith, going to hide away like Sam Darnold. He's going to come back and get a second opportunity, and his second act is going to be far greater than his first.
Hey, Graziano, you know what the Giants could really use? Maybe they could sign, I don't know, like a player like Saquon Barkley. You know, like he probably wouldn't run for 1 yard a carry, and you would give your quarterback another option. And like, you know, that's who they could really use. If they could find a way to get a guy like Saquon
that would've helped
Barkley,
yesterday.
that might actually help a lot.
But they're going to block like that for Saquon Barkley? I mean, look at that hole he just ran through. Look, I mean, the issue with the Giants is they had a philosophical decision. We're not going to pay that much money to a running back. We'll let him go even if it's to a division rival. The flip side was they did pay the quarterback, and we're left to wonder if that was the right guy to pay, because
I
now
don't think anyone's
2 years
wondering
left
that.
on the deal.
Are we
and
wondering that?
Well, I'm just
We
saying,
not
like,
wondering.
so next year's salary is
We
$30
ain't
million.
wondering.
Right,
$30 million for a
nothing.
starting NFL quarterback right now is a pretty good deal if he can play. But he's also got $23 million of that guaranteed against injury. So that's a little storyline to watch as the year goes on.
Context is everything. Go back to that graphic about when the ball is in the air 20 yards or more. The only people he's better than right now, when you look at this graphic, is Bryce Young, Will Levis, and Jacoby Brissett. And if we know this
Who the hell
stat,
he's throwing to?
but the opposing defensive coordinators know this. You know this part. So the field gets compressed. You have to throw people out of these looks and get the ball over their heads. And be it Jalen Hyatt, Darius Slayton, there are other players there. And to me, Daniel Jones being 25th in the league in completion percentage when the ball is 20 yards or more says a lot more about him than the surrounding cast.
I feel like we used to say the same thing about Sam Darnold, same thing about Geno Smith, a lot of quarterbacks in this league. Environment matters. They haven't surrounded him with any talent.
The Cowboys didn't look that good tonight. I think they played decent, and if it was any other team outside of the Giants, five of the field goals, at least 2 of those or maybe 3 of those might have been touchdowns, and the game would have been different.
I agree.
The game would have been different, and another team would have won.
Arguably, the Giants would be that other team. And so let's get Chris Canty into the conversation again from Undisputed. I want to hear you on both teams.
Yeah.
So I opened the show by asking Swagu, if you are a Cowboy fan, if you are one who wants to see the Cowboys become a contender this season, do you emerge from last night's victory on the road, short week in the division, do you emerge more optimistic or less optimistic based on that performance?
I would say less optimistic. The only thing that I would be confident about if I'm a Cowboys fan sitting here today is that the NFC East is going to be a one playoff team division, and it ain't going to be either one of them teams you watched last night. I mean, the Dallas Cowboys, one-dimensional on offense, and that dimension is number 88 in CeeDee Lamb. And we've seen if that offense doesn't get out to a hot start, that defense is going to struggle. When that defense can't play downhill, when they don't have the opportunity to tee off with their pass rush, like they did last night with Daniel Jones having 40 pass attempts, then they are going to struggle. So I think they have a very specific formula for how they're going to have to win games, and it doesn't create a lot of pathways, a lot of different varieties in how they can beat people, and that's problematic for a team that has championship aspirations.
Yeah, Chris, the other place I push back is Jake Ferguson. To me, he's emerging as a frontline difference-making tight end. Yeah. If you get him going, maybe Brandon Cooks makes a couple plays on the outside, but clearly they do need a running back to get to where they want to go. But Dak Prescott, he's a difference maker, so it gives them a real chance.
Swagu, I want to ask you about him as again, my resident Cowboy. Your buddy Dan Orlovsky was here yesterday, and he said no team is making it harder on their own quarterback than the Cowboys are on Dak Prescott. So that was before last night's game. But he was basing that on what they're doing formation-wise, scheme-wise, lack of running game, et cetera. What about that? Did they take a step forward in that? Like, we wanted a CC to get involved. We got a little bit of that. Is there nothing to emerge feeling better about after last night?
Look, let's take away a couple of things. Chris hit the great point about seeing CeeDee Lamb moving around and putting him in different spots. Yesterday I talked about it needed to be where's Waldo. The unfortunate part is, and I hate that we, again, negative Nancy. Your number one franchise wide receiver that you just gave $100 million, you had to put him in the backfield in order to garner a big run. And to me, and dudes that's been on the field, that is not good. That's just not good, man. And when we start thinking about this team, and trying to go forward. And Tannenbaum brings up a good point. Everybody thought Jake Ferguson would be the second option to CeeDee Lamb, and I think he is going to get better. Lupke, how you say his name? Lupke has been a bright spot for this offense. But ultimately, when you look at the Dallas Cowboys last night, if you're honest, and I think everybody on this panel is honest. If you look at them last night and you're honest, you have to project. That's a part of this business. That's a part of what we do. And when we're comparing what we've seen from the Dallas Cowboys over the last 3 weeks, even in one of those being a win, you cannot surmise that this team is good enough to challenge anybody that's competent offensively and that they can't get a lead on in order to rush the passer and dominate a game. And I got news for you as well. Micah won some rushes, but it wasn't super dominant at getting after Daniel Jones last night either when we talk about the pass rush. So there's a lot of things left to be desired on that field, even in a 5-point win over a Giants team that I think is bad in totality.
Yeah. They play the Cowboys schedule coming up here. There's someone shout out when you think they win a game. Cowboys at the Steelers, home to the Lions, at the 49ers, at the Falcons, maybe home to the Eagles, like home to the Texans. Right now, our analytics project them to lose all of those games. Now, it doesn't mean they will lose all of those games, but that's look at that. Yeah, I mean, they're closer to. Some of them are closer to. The point is, the schedule right now. They needed that win. They desperately needed to bank a win. Graziano, when they get it.
Swagu said, look at the schedule. He said when they come up against a team that has an elite offense, who there is playing elite offense right now? Well, like no one is.
Well,
right?
Detroit can.
That's because they haven't played Dallas yet.
And Houston can,
and
the 49ers
might be healthy.
But they're not. And I think that's the point, right? Like, we're 4 games in, and it feels like a representative sample size. But the fact of the matter is, there are very few, if any, teams in the league right now that look as good as they're going to look.
Right.
So the question with Dallas is not how they look; it's where can they get better. I think that's where the concern lies, right? Because like, what's going to happen as the season goes along? Yeah. Like Ezekiel Elliott's not going to get younger, right? Like they're going to need to figure something out in the run game, and they have a rookie center, rookie left tackle who had a rough night last night. Could those guys get better? Sure, you could see that, but. You know, it's not like Jalen Tolbert's a rookie. Like, we kind of know what he is at this point. I think that's the concern if I'm Dallas. Like, where are you going to get better than you are right now in this time of year where everybody else is also putting it all together?
I have a limited time with Canty. I got to get him back to radio. So if I were to ask you to describe, let's say, the Giants coach, Brian Daboll, right now, in one word, what would it be?
He's toast. He's done.
Toast.
Like he's the biggest loser coming out of last night. I know he lost all of that weight in the offseason. He's about to lose his damn job in season. That's what's going to happen. I mean, last night, you point to an opportunity that he had. First drive of the second half, you got goal to go from your 3-yard line. You realize the Cowboys have gotten out to a hard start, back-to-back touchdown drives where they went the length of the field, and you decide you're not going to go for it there, but you go for it on 4th down 3 other times after that point in the game. That was an inflection point. We always think about game-on-the-line moments at the end in the 4th quarter. That was a game-on-the-line moment. And for a team that hadn't scored a touchdown at home yet this season, that was the opportunity to get in the end zone, and you didn't get it done. Chris, that is on Brian Daboll, just like the loss to the Washington Commanders was on Brian Daboll when Graham Gano, their starting kicker, had a lower body injury, and they didn't have a backup kicker on.